Thank you. Okay, this is the September 5th meeting of the Planning Commission. This is actually a two-meeting month, so this is not on our normally scheduled Tuesday, which is the 3rd. We are trying to double up meetings to finish our work on the bylaw modernization grant. So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:09 after a few technical difficulties. And the first item on the agenda is to review the agenda for any addition, removal, or adjustment. I have nothing. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, so we will go to the second item, which is a continued discussion of our work with the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. Adam is here tonight, and on the agenda is a discussion of definitions.
Okay, great, thank you, Kevin. So we are working our way through your uniform development regulations. We are basically revising them to provide for housing opportunities within your village planning district. We have been through all of the districts at this point, so we've been through all of your district regulations. Tonight we're going back. I want to look at parking. I want to look at PUDs. I'm going to want to talk about subdivisions, site plan review versus conditional use, especially for multifamily dwellings, and we'll look at the definition of multifamily dwellings. We'll look at density bonuses specifically in the village business district. And again, density for duplexes versus single family homes, density for multifamily units versus single family homes. And then if we get this far, we'll get to inn and guest facility and boarding house and those definitions. So that's from your parking lot, the chair's parking lot, which were distributed with the meeting minutes, and then we'll go to other parking lot items. So that's where I'm headed tonight, starting with parking, and I hope this one is going to be pretty easy. What I want to do is compare Bristol's current regs with the requirements under S100, which is the Home Act. It's the law that just went into effect July 1st of this year. It was the legislature's basically attempt to provide for more housing as well. I'll start with the Home Act, and basically, and I'm actually reading from the summary of the act because the act is 100 pages or more. But the provisions that deal with parking basically say, in residential districts served by municipal sewer and water, municipalities cannot require more than one parking space per dwelling, but municipalities may require 1.5 spaces for duplex multifamily dwellings in areas without sewer and water for multi-unit dwellings if existing public parking is not sufficient. Rounded to the nearest whole number when calculating the total number of required districts. Bristol actually updated its parking regulations requirements not so long ago, and for household uses or housing uses, you have one parking space per dwelling unit is required. So your requirement, and that's let's see, that's section 710 through 715, pages 67 or so. 66, 67, there you go.
Starts on 67, yeah, so let me share it.
So you should green in the middle.
Okay, there we go.
So Bill, can you see that?
Well, if I lean forward a little bit, I think I can.
Okay, great. So these are Bristol's current parking regulations, and if you go down to 711, Kevin, just a little further, right, the first very one is household uses. So basically, one per dwelling unit. You only require one per dwelling unit, and you also give your DRB some leeway to allow less if there's existing on-street parking, or if they're near a public transit stop, or other reasons. So I would tell you, your regulations are already more permissive. And this is throughout the entire town of Bristol, or the entire village of Bristol, actually the entire town of Bristol. Whereas theirs are one in an area served by water and sewer, which, as you recall, at our last meeting, we proposed to revise all of the water and sewer into the village business district. So that way, for the purposes of dealing with this new regulation, if we dealt with it in the village business district, we'd address most of its concerns, because most of it deals with villages served by water and sewer.
You mentioned on-street parking. I believe it's technically illegal via the statutes for the village of Bristol. That's what the police chief tells me. I mean, they're very lenient, he says. They don't want to bother people too much if they're using it for a very temporary purpose, but
Yeah.
they can ticket and they will ticket if people are using it regularly.
So what do you mean by that? You mean like down street?
I mean, like in the village, the entire village, you park in front of your house if you're on, even if two wheels are on the traveled lane, they have the ability to ticket if they think it's being, he just said we're very, we try not to, but they can.
People that park on the side of the street.
And the way your regulation is written, if applicants can demonstrate that they can find shared facilities elsewhere, they have an agreement with another landowner, they have an agreement with a business or a church or something of that nature.
Of course, these things could change.
And yeah, Bristol does have a fair amount of parking downtown around the.
Are we talking about downtown now only, or the whole village?
The whole village.
Yeah.
Yep. So the burden is, if the applicant wants to request less than one unit, or less than one space per unit, they have to show that I can request that on this property because I have parking elsewhere, wherever that might be. And given what you've just said, just saying, well, there's plenty of parking around the green probably won't work for them. I don't think your DRB would let them get away with that.
And they can just walk up a couple blocks when they want to go home, right?
Yeah. So I would tell you, I don't think, I'd recommend no change to your parking regulations. I don't think there's anything you need to do for S100, and you're already more liberal with parking requirements, or less restrictive with parking requirements than the statute was. So unless you have parking issues that you want to address and change in here, I don't see any reason to change them.
Adam, can you say again what the new statute specifies?
In areas served by water and sewer, which is only Bristol's village business district, so really the heart of your downtown, it's one space per unit, per dwelling unit, which is the same as Bristol's. Outside of water and sewered areas, it can go up to, it allows a town or a village to increase the requirement to 1.5 per dwelling unit. You are already at 1 per dwelling unit. Bristol is already at 1 per dwelling unit.
And these are maximums, right?
That's correct. Yes. So the new state law basically says, no, it's a minimum requirement. You have to have, well, no, excuse me, you can only require 1 per dwelling unit. Yes, you are correct.
Every now and then I am. So Slim, what were you saying about the wonderful police chief we have, who I like very much?
He is wonderful, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And he said we could have 2 wheels on the street now and then, but not on a regular basis. If it's a parking spot.
He was very clear that there is no on-street like legal on-street parking in Bristol Village.
Okay,
And he tries not, they don't enforce it much.
yep,
If somebody's using it for a short period of time, they don't ticket it, but if, he made it, didn't say it out loud, but it's pretty clear that if somebody was using it regularly, they may well find themselves with a ticket.
okay. So if it's in your driveway or in your garage, the parking, you're okay, or if it's off
Oh,
the,
yeah.
off the street,
Off-street parking is certainly okay, yeah.
even in the parkway or whatever we call it in Bristol. Okay, and what's the number, what's the requirement or specification for the new project going in near the firehouse?
That was developed under your current reg, so I would say it's one per dwelling unit. They've got at least one per dwelling unit in there.
All right. So is the theory that even though most households require at least one person working and probably two, that on average, one's gonna be gone? Is that the theory, or is it that they have driveways and parking elsewhere? Does anyone foresee a problem with one per dwelling unit with the fire department development?
Not familiar enough myself with what it looks
I
like.
think that's more of a, when you do a development and with the parking, the access and turnaround, that gets more into the review of site plan review and DRB review with that, as opposed to a single family residence that's accessed directly from the street, only being required to have a minimum of one parking space.
But now it's a maximum.
No, it's a maximum that we can require. We can't require that they have 2 parking spaces per unit or 3 parking spaces per unit. We can only require that they have 1 parking space per unit.
Or 1.5, correct? Now, if we wanted to?
If you chose to outside of your village business district, you could require that, yes.
So that's what we're thinking about now, is 1.5 versus 1.
Yeah.
Well, you're already at 1, so you're already, like I said, more lenient than the statute.
Yeah.
And I guess I haven't seen a parking problem in downtown Bristol.
They got lawns.
So-
We got the lawn to park on, right?
So, yeah, I think that'd be a good question for Chris. I'm not sure. Personally, I'd like to make it more restrictive, just without having rationale.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, most houses have more than one car, most
Oh, yeah.
ones, so. And we're adding the ADUs in there now, so it's kind of,
They can put more parking spaces in, it's just the minimum requirement is to have 1.
Correct. So a developer could choose to put in however many they wanted to. It was the rationale behind the only requiring 1 was they didn't want parking lots taking up a lot of your downtown space.
So I heard the ADU question. So
ADU would be a unit,
it's
and
a
it would
dwelling
require,
unit, so
it would
that
require an
means you have
additional, yes,
space.
space.
Okay.
Can you count part of the driveway as a parking space?
Yes,
yeah, driveway.
yeah, absolutely.
So I have a driveway, I actually have 4 parking spaces there.
Well,
Yeah, I guess so. We could back them
potentially.
all, yeah. All right.
Section 712 has it as 9 by 18 for dimensions of a space, as long as that area, that size is provided.
Right.
The definition of a parking space has it as 9 by 20, but this says 9 by 18.
So most driveways are 18
So
feet
we
wide.
should choose one,
Just
I
saying.
guess.
Okay. Well, I'd say we'll see how it goes with what we've got. If it turns out to be a problem, we would revisit. But we're in compliance now Adam, if I understand you correctly, it seems like it might be a
That's
little,
correct.
little too low to me, but that's kind of been my view right along in this revision process.
And did I hear from you, Kevin, you're feeling a little bit like you'd want to be require a bit more parking per unit?
No, I would want to understand the rationale for it, i.e. there's an issue, that we've got an issue right now that, we're not accommodating the right number of parking spaces through zoning, and I'm not sure I'm hearing that.
No.
And that's what I mentioned, if Chris was here,
There's definitely limited public parking, but that's a separate issue.
I mean, he would see it or hear about it, you know. I mean, not that I know everything going on in town, but it doesn't seem to be an issue. But
Yeah,
I would think wintertime, road department would, I'd be aware of that, and fire department as well.
That's true.
yeah,
You want me to put a note and talk with Chris?
just to check and see if our assumptions are correct.
I'll ask him whether your current regulations cause any problems.
Undue burdens, as they say. But the planning gurus like Adam.
Undue burdens. That's exactly how I'm gonna ask it now, Bill.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready to move on then?
what's the,
Yep.
sounds like it.
Okay, so unless Chris tells us different and we bring it up another night, we will leave it as it is. Kevin, if you'd go to your PUD section, which is section 609. Oh, you went by it, I think.
No, it's playing for a big long haul here.
608, 609, there you go.
Indeed.
Okay. I looked at these as well to see if there was anything in there that I would recommend that you change to accommodate housing. And honestly, they're relatively use neutral. So, and basically they stick with the changes to they're built on the dimensional standards and the density standards in the underlying district. So all the districts that we just went through where we looked at and made some changes to the density and the uses, your PUDs are built on those. So I'm not sure I don't have any changes to recommend to you there either. Maybe one of you has an issue or something that you want to bring up, but I think they can work to promote basically housing and mixed use developments on a single piece of property. You know, someone could do multiple family units with commercial below, or they seem to work for Bristol Commons over here. So I didn't have any specific changes for you.
Has anybody got any comments?
I think the only question would be if DRB or zoning, Chris, has had any issues since we've enacted them a couple of years ago, if anything's come up that, while we have the chance to identify and correct.
Yeah, and you were involved with a little bit more, but there is, the DRB has, and maybe just certain members, but it seems like the DRB has issues with PUDs.
I think it's the interpretation and willingness to accept a different interpretation is maybe an issue from my personal experience with it. At the time, which is not the current board, there were some members that held staunch views on it and were not willing to listen to anything else at the time.
Planning commission or the review?
Review board. which caused some conflict with projects that came through and how they were handled and treated and changes that had to be made, so. That's nothing that we can address with this at this time, though.
Well, I will ask Chris the same question and get back to you. So now, Kevin, I would ask you to move to Article 9, which is your subdivision regulations, which are your subdivision regulations. There you go. And there are a lot of them. My question for you here is, or I guess I'll make a statement first. Act 100 permissively enabled basically minor subdivisions to be handled as administrative matters. So rather than requiring a hearing for minor subdivisions, they would allow your zoning administrator, well, you, the town of Bristol, could allow your zoning administrator to handle minor permits administratively, and no hearings would be required. So that's the question to you. Let's go to minor and major for a second, the definitions.
Minor.
Yeah, all the way to the end. And it'll be subdivision minor, subdivision major. I think, yeah, there you go. Okay, so a major subdivision is any residential subdivision containing 4 or more lots. So, and it says 3 new lots, the existing one plus 3 new ones, or requiring a new road or extension of municipal services, water or sewer, or if it houses commercial industrial project, or multifamily housing projects that meet the definition of a subdivision, or parcels subdivided within blah, blah, blah. But I guess I tell you, it's 4 or more, or requiring a road or infrastructure, or having commercial uses. So a minor subdivision is any residential subdivision containing 3 or less lots, and otherwise not qualifying as a major. And if you go to your definition of driveways, basically I think it's serving for, a road serves 4 or more, a driveway serves 3 or less.
Does it say in there that the width of a driveway or anywhere?
You've got a 50-foot in your road standards, in the subdivision regulations, they have some. So actually, maybe we need to go, instead of here, we need to go back up to the subdivision regulations, and we need to go to your road standards. Excuse me. Whoop.
So the
Keep
zoning
going.
administrator can currently review simple,
Boundary line adjustments. So if you and Rob are neighbors, and you've got a 10-acre parcel and Rob's got a 10-acre parcel, and they all meet zoning and everything, and you say to Rob, hey, I'd really like that, a 1/4 of an acre down in the corner of your lot, would you be willing to sell it to me? He said, sure. Basically, you could have 10 1/4 and Rob would have 9.75, and Chris could do that administratively, currently. This would allow him to do minor, smaller subdivisions as well.
Doesn't the septic people get involved in something like that too? I mean, I know they do.
They would need, yes, in a subdivision, you need to have septic permits. So the answer is yes.
That's just
but
another thing.
That's another,
Yeah,
AMR.
right.
yeah.
Keep going, Kevin, we get to, oh, you must have already gone by it.
What are we looking for now? The driveway thing?
The driveway thing, yeah.
natural resources, common land, keep, utilities, infrastructure, right there. Those are your those are your road standards.
Transportation.
What page are we on now?
This is page 89.
19?
Can you scroll down? And just a little more. Okay, that's it. All right, I've got one more place to ask you to look, and that's in roads and definitions. Huh. Um,
So the distinction by the definitions between road and driveway is public.
public way and private way, but generally I would have told you driveways were restricted to basically serving 3 units.
I'm gonna write myself a note and I'm gonna do a little research for you. Okay.
What did you decide based on what we've got written right now?
I should be able to, Bill, but I can't.
Okay,
Because I'm looking for, it may be there, but it's not where I thought it was.
okay.
Um,
Does the new law affect that? Driveways or roads?
the new law affects major and minor subdivisions. If you chose to, you could allow your zoning administrator to approve, minor subdivisions. And that's basically subdivisions without a road, that serve 2 new lots, a total of 3 lots or less. So relatively small. And I had thought the difference between a road and a driveway was driveways could serve 3 lots, roads became public, and a road, and the requirements went up when you served 4. But I'm not seeing that, so I've got to find it.
Plus, we don't even have the requirement for anything in these regs, it seems like. Because I just vaguely remember I was looking into having have like a like more than one house on a property, and they said, oh, your roadway's gotta be a certain, your driveway, excuse me, it has to be like 36 or something like this, if you have more than one house.
There are sometimes like slope requirements and
Maximum slope, and then
Yeah.
minimum width.
Yes.
Things
No,
like that.
We've got that in there someplace. That was a big discussion years ago. It has to be fairly flat in the last car length, I think.
Didn't hear that.
So I will look that up, but anyway, the question again is same question is, and you don't have to do it. This is a permissive change in S100. Should your zoning administrator be allowed to administratively grant minor subdivisions? Do you want to enable that or not?
I think I'm a pretty clear no vote at this stage of the game.
I'm up in the air still. I haven't made a decision.
Unless my initial thought would be no, unless it is causing a logistic problem by doing it the way we're currently doing.
Bill?
I'd be leaning yes, but I'll keep an open mind.
So I guess my thought is, if you look at the definition in the last sentence is, for any subdivision containing issues which the DRB considers too critical to be a minor subdivision, if they no longer oversee minor subdivisions,
We'd have to take that out.
That creates a disconnect there.
We'd have to redefine the definition so the zoning administrator could basically make a decision or not. It wouldn't be the decision. So generally, right now, it's sketch plan review. All your subdivisions go to sketch plan review, and one of the things which is an informal review before the DRB, and it's, what do you think? I'm thinking of subdividing my land. What do you think? I'm thinking of doing this, and it's supposed to be kind of a feeling out process. At the end of it, the only real action the DRB takes is they classify it as a minor or major.
Okay.
And that's how you currently get to whether it's a minor or whether it's a major, and they apply these definitions. If, you're right, Kevin, if you, as the planning commission, chose to say, we're gonna let the ZA do minors, then you'd have to give, basically, we'd have to rewrite these definitions so that the ZA could make a clear cut yes or no. So the last sentence, or the last phrase of the major subdivisions would have to be deleted in there.
The determination of whether major or minor in that final determination of it was one of the reasons why I was saying no to making it administrative, because that may be an undue hardship on the zoning administrator making those calls the way things go.
And then being second guessed
Yeah,
after the fact.
Yeah.
because that ambiguity at the end of basically what other impacts the project has, whether that triggers a major or a minor, that the DRB makes the determination on.
You can be pretty sure that even the smaller, what this is trying to call minor, might not be minor to certain people
Right.
near the development, and they only like to have a chance.
Well,
And you would get rid of the sketch plan process, basically, as well.
so yeah, that was the other thing, and now if you go back to a sketch plan review,
You could still have it for majors. You could still have a sketch plan if you chose to, for majors.
oh, so if the ZA did minors, then the DRB wouldn't see minors for sketch plan?
DRB would not see minors. They'd be done administratively, so the ZA would do them without a hearing.
Sounds bad. I'm on the team that would think that really needs to be more communication with all the neighbors, et cetera. Of course, you know what I'm referring to, but those little P signs are not sufficient. Anybody gonna be directly affected, I think, should get a direct notice, email, whatever's the best chosen way, so they know what's going on. People need to know what's going on.
That's getting a little outside of
Yeah, I know.
what we're talking
I
about
threw that
here,
in there, I
because
know.
when you start talking about directly affected, it's all still subjective.
Well-
Much less so.
I've been persuaded. I think what we have in the rules now are fairly reasonable requests of somebody who wants to make a minor subdivision. If I understand correctly, you go to sketch plan review, and if the commission or review board decides it's minor for the reasons we've already stated, then that's the end of it. So there's a minor, there's a limited burden on the subdivider, but it's reasonable. And it also gives the neighbors a chance to weigh in.
So Bill, that's not quite right.
Okay, correct me.
There's a sketch plan for both majors and minors. Minors go directly to a final plan. Majors go to a preliminary plan and then a final plan.
Okay,
So
so
it's,
you come back even if you're a minor.
yes, you do. There are two hearing,
They have at least one hearing after the sketch plan review for both of them. The major has two, and the minor has one after the sketch plan.
Okay. How does this connect to the whole controversy over the length of the driveway? And also frontage.
different I think when you say the length of the driveway, are you referring to like the Act 250, what was called the road rule?
Yep,
It doesn't.
okay. Okay. All right then. And how about the frontage issue?
Um, it, I don't know what you mean by the frontage issue.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking of are some cases we had over the years where somebody wanted to subdivide a lot in back. And that's where it also comes back to the width of the right of way. And to have a
Mhm.
proper driveway going back to serve, I guess in this case, one lot, but if it's a major, 2 or 3 lots. Um, that's an issue because it has to be wide enough to give proper access, but if the house of the person in the front lot is close to the boundary, that can be a hardship on him or her.
So I guess I would tell you, the planning commission needs to approve a right-of-way to an interior lot. And I think it's gotta be at least, I think it's 50 feet in Bristol. Generally, that's what they are. And as far as the dimensional setbacks, the front yard setback would apply, even though it's not right on the street, and basically the width along the roadway would be assumed, so it would be the line most closely to parallel to the road would be that dimensional portion of the lot. Did that make sense?
Uh, Pretty much up till the end. So the side yard setback would be calculated from the right of way or the center of the right of way or from the boundary of the lot.
So the front yard, the front property line, which has to be a certain width, would be the line on the lot, the corner of the lot that is basically most parallel to the existing road from the right of way.
Yeah.
And then you do side lots from there.
So if the side yard setback is 30 feet or 50 feet, that's calculated from the side lot boundary or from the right of
The
way,
side,
the driveway that's going into the interior lot, the boundary.
the side lot boundary.
Okay. And just to refresh my memory, this has changed back and forth over the years, but when we're calculating front yard setback, are we going from the middle of the road or the edge of the road, the right of way, edge of the right of way?
Um, I think in some of the village, you're doing it from the center line, but outside the village, you're doing it, from the I've gotta look. I
The
can't remember.
definition is, building front line to the center of the roadway.
That's not necessarily gonna apply to a lot that's way back from, if you've got a right of way, so if you've got a road, and then you've got a right of way going in, like this. You're gonna, the front yard setback's a little more difficult, but to measure from the roadway, cause the roadway doesn't exist. So I'd tell you, in that case, you'd probably do it from the lot line, but.
All right, well, thank you for helping me work through that, Adam.
Okay.
I think I can support what we have now, if I understand correctly. And with the site, with the sketch plan and on the premise that everybody, whether it's on the development review board, the developer and the neighbors are operating in good faith, which I'm sure they almost always are.
Okay, so I heard 3 no's, basically.
So I'm hearing to keep it the way it is.
That's what I heard.
And I was on the fence, I'm okay with staying the way it is.
Okay,
I didn't really. I live outside of town, so some of these things I think differently about.
okay, the next one is our most difficult one of the evening. And we tried it when we first started this, and we kind of punted it down the road, and I'm afraid it's now time to come back to it. It's basically site plan versus conditional use review for multifamily dwellings. So I guess I would say, Kevin, if you would go to page 16, which is your use chart. And go all the way up to the top. Whoop. What about the previous one? Maybe it's page 15. There we go. All the way up to the top. Right there. So if you look at multifamily dwelling multifamily, which is the 3rd colored line down, and then you look at your high density residential district and your village mixed district, which is now the majority of your village after the changes we have proposed last meeting. Multifamily dwellings are a conditional use. I would note in your village business district, they're a site plan use, so they're permitted with a site plan. And because all your water and sewer is in your village business district, that complies with 100. So you're in full compliance with S100 right now. My question to you is, do you still want to keep a conditional use review for multifamily units within the village mixed district and the high density residential district?
I think maybe if we refresh the definitions of those two things.
I think, you mean the definition of multifamily?
No, site plan versus conditional use.
Okay, so let's talk about site plan versus conditional use review. And we can go to, I need to look at your,
We'll go back to
I need to look at the table of context. No, it would be, if we go to the table of contents and go to site plan review versus conditional use review, we'll get a page. It's in Article 3. I think it's after that. Keep going. There we go, conditional uses. Okay, so for conditional uses, basically it needs to go to the DRB. It's a 2-part test. The first part has general conditions, so if you'd go down for me a little bit, Kevin. We can go past the application and the public notice and the general criteria. So when determining the appropriateness of a proposed conditional use, the Development Review Board shall determine that the development or use will not result in an undue adverse impact on any of the following. So if you're going through a conditional use review,
capacity of community facilities, character of the area, traffic impacts. Basically, what you're saying to the applicant is, this might be appropriate in this location, this might not be appropriate in this location. And you look at the first 5 criteria to determine whether, in this case, a multifamily dwelling would be appropriate in that location. Section 356, site-specific criteria for review, are exactly the same as the site plan criteria. So once you've made it through the first, is it appropriate here? Then basically you say, okay, it's appropriate here, but do we want to govern the parking area? Do we want to govern pedestrian accesses? Do we want to govern landscaping features? So it's, okay, it's appropriate here, but we've got to make sure that it's safe for people to get to. We've got to make sure that it's landscaped appropriately. Does everybody understand that distinction? You don't look like you do,
I'm
John.
not sure,
Okay.
I'm following this, this site-specific criteria for, we're in conditional use here now.
We are, but I
This-
would tell you that this section of conditional use has 2 tiers of review.
Well, right above is the first tier, right?
Right above is the first tier.
Right,
That is so that's the first tier. Is
Yeah.
it appropriate here?
right.
Once you find whether it's appropriate or not, if you find it's appropriate here, then you move to the second tier. And the second tier, the site-specific criteria for review is exactly the same as your site plan review. It's all the same stuff.
So it's parking, landscaping, and not too much else?
Well, we can go down.
There's all of
It's
this 356, and then also
outdoor storage of trash, building design.
Building design. Mm-hmm.
If we keep going down, it also ties into some
Okay,
of,
okay, let's stop at building design for a minute, may I?
yeah,
What if the building already exists? And it's not, and it's,
then you wouldn't apply that criteria. So it's a use review as opposed to a building review.
so of course, I mean, I'm kind of stuck on that Garfield thing. So, but that person built this building.
but
That's just as an example I'm stuck on.
Oh,
So they wanted to do something.
I was thinking
They-
Garfield the cat, and I had no idea what you were talking about.
They built the building, which would never fit the, whatever this one's, character of the area phrase. It just doesn't fit the character of the area phrase. I think most people would agree with that. But because there was the ADU thing involved, and other than that, and the other thing,
They never went through conditional use review.
not correct, and they only
Yes.
went to the site plan thing.
no. No, that was not a site plan review.
It was a ADUs or
Criteria.
a permitted use.
But he came in because he wanted to put a business in the bottom of it. So here he's been able to build a building 10 feet from somebody's line that is not in the character of the neighborhood.
So wait a minute.
Hang on.
The 10-foot is allowable setback.
For all buildings now like this? I can build my house 10 feet from the line now?
We'll take a look at the zoning in
Front
that
yard or a
district.
rear yard setback, yeah.
Whoa, that's,
Or,
I'm
excuse me,
sorry,
side yard or rear
I
yard.
haven't been involved for a
So
while.
that's, no, but that's why we have those setbacks, and each different in all the zones, right?
Yep. Oh, and that's
So-
on, it's on that page?
It's on, these are the pages of the different zones,
Yeah.
you know,
But
and
is it
so,
10, where would I find that 10 feet is a setback for the,
So is it-
village or whatever?
As an accessory building, it's not a house.
right.
Right, but it's on those, I just wondered if it's on those pages.
It would be on these pages.
All right.
Down at the bottom, there's a little table on each one that
So
has
he-
that stuff.
He got permitted for that thing
As an accessory building, I believe.
as an accessory building.
Right, as a garage ADU. That's
Accessory building.
accessory building ADU,
No, couldn't do an
Accessory
ADU.
building.
no, correct or no?
Could not do an ADU.
Well, originally that was part of the discussion, and then he decided not to change the house to allow for the use of an ADU and stop that.
Yeah, but I believe he got permission with the original, try for permit with
Okay.
accessory building with an ADU above.
With some other conditions that he decided not to do.
Right, but so yes, there was a duplex involved, and it
Yeah,
really
so-
shouldn't have been, now
So the other thing, as I understand it, was he was supposed to take the house and change it from a duplex to single family
Okay, so.
in order to put in the
All right, so
ADU.
I've had one question, then this whole ongoing thing is, then this may be a little off topic, but is it appropriate for the zoning administrator to approve a project on the person saying, I'm going to do this, when what's on the ground at the time does not fit the regs? Like, you know you can't do it because you have a duplex up front, so.
That's conditions though, that's with everything, that's with the DRB, that's the conditions that they put on a project, that if you do this, you can do this project, that's.
All right. That makes like the enforcement get harder and harder.
It is, the enforcement's the hard part, because who enforces it?
Yeah.
And what's the enforcement? And that's on all of it, right?
Yeah, right, but, okay, I'll get off this for now, but the
So the
building,
difference between conditional use review and site plan review is whether it's appropriate in that first tier that Adam was just talking about of, is this use appropriate for this site?
Yeah.
Whereas site plan review, it's already deemed as appropriate for the site, and then they just have to go through these review criteria. Is that a correct summary?
That's a correct summary.
well, I'm gonna
Yes.
study this a little more, and I'll come back if I have any questions.
Okay, so if it's site plan,
From 356 on, right there is all site plan review and conditional review.
what you said, if I understand it, is conditional use may or may not happen,
Yes.
depending on the project. But if it goes to site plan, it can happen with conditions.
Yeah. With
That's
review.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So there's a,
so conditional use is awful close, no, site plan review is awful close to a permitted use
It's basically permitted with a
Except-
little bit of oversight.
with additional conditions.
Yeah.
yes,
But they have to, example, have enough parking and safe egress and ingress, et cetera, that type of thing.
yep,
So that's all through the DRB.
the site plan and the conditional use are both through the DRB. So, site plan, because it has one level of review, right, it's allowed, but we're gonna look at all these things and you'll have to comply with them. Is easier, or at least philosophically, theoretically easier to get through than a conditional use review. So my question for you is, given what we've been talking about, should multifamily dwellings still be conditional use reviews in your HDR district and your village mix district? And I guess I would say the other addition to that is, right now, basically multifamilies, you only have one definition of multifamily, and it's basically 3 units or over. If you were to make it unconditional, would you want to make small and large multifamilies or so, and make one of them site plan permitted and one of them small site plan permitted and large conditional? So there are some nuances here, I guess is what I'm suggesting. Or there are potentially nuances if you choose to go down that road.
We never came to a consensus on the multifamily thing, did we? Okay, I was just making sure I was remembering correctly.
Yep, yes, we didn't. We, basically, people wanted to understand the districts more before they were willing to talk about changes or densities of multifamily uses and where they were allowed. So now that we've been through all the districts, I'm hoping that you're all more comfortable with them and what's allowed, and we can have this conversation again.
Well, I'll go, I don't think this should change. I'm just looking at one thing on the conditional use, compliance with regulations. Conditional use must comply with regulations in effect at the time of submission of the application. Now, you were saying that conditional use, because it's okay, you have duplex now, change it. Doesn't this say a conditional use must come, and in the conditional use one, conditions must comply with regulations in effect at the time of submission. So you're saying, oh, the guy can say, we will meet this by the time I submit, or whatever, when I'm done with this, it'll comply with the regulations. But this does not mean that it has to comply with the regulations at the time of the permit.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, me too. A conditional use must comply with regulations in effect at the time of submission. So actually, it's very
Can you
clear,
go
it's
back
time
to
of
conditional
submission.
use?
And therefore, I would think we want conditional use.
If you go back to conditional use in
something.
Article 3,
Page 44. On my sheet, anyway. All right, there you go. You just go down a little bit. I mean, I'm sorry, up a little bit. So, on number 4, let's say.
Well, again, through the project, things could change to make something that's non-compliant, compliant.
It says at the time of submission of the application.
But that's the conditional use, not the
Yeah, but
whole
the-
thing or anything else. That's the conditional use, whatever they're applying to do there.
The thing is, at the time, these regulations are what needs to be governing, I would think. Not that if you have something that's non-complying, you can't apply for conditional use and make it complying.
This is to determine the appropriateness of a proposed conditional use.
Right, so if I have a lot and I wanna do project Y on it, that project Y, which is a conditional use, needs to meet with the regulations at the time I apply.
Right. But if I have a duplex and I want to put an ADU, I do not comply with the regulations.
That's totally separate. That's a separate thing. Or that's not conditional use.
Well, let's say if
review.
it were a conditional use.
Well,
That's what I'm doing.
But
That's a separate thing. That's not what we're talking
So,
about.
so your project could be to remove that duplex in order to put in an ADU.
Yeah,
So you can't not let that go forward because it's a duplex today. If the project makes it a single-family house and then you end up putting an ADU, it's what ends up as a finished product needs to be compliant. Not necessarily what's going in there.
oh, so what they're saying is, they can't change the rules on you in the middle. You only have, that's all it's really saying, is that at the time of submission, you must meet those, even though you don't meet them now.
Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't say
fine.
you can't, it doesn't say you can't proceed if you don't meet it.
Okay, it's just, like, I just think of that guy, he's gotten in, he's in a difficult spot, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe a very difficult spot, and I just don't think people should be led into that if we could help it, that's all. As bad as that, whatever, I'll stop there, but, yeah.
But yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities where you're not compliant, that you could do a project and become compliant.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
it seems to me that the changes we've made in the various districts in general, not always, but in general, allowed for more density.
That is true.
And therefore, I would be leaning towards conditional use, which is the more rigorous standard, is it not?
Yes, it is.
I agree.
That's where I am, is that it should stay conditional in my mind.
Okay.
Still have the answer to what is a multifamily.
Let's go there next. Let's go to your definition of multiple families, if everybody's done with this one. I saw enough of you say, don't make any changes to move on. Can you go down to the definitions and the definition of a multifamily, Kevin, please? It'll be, dwelling, dwelling slash multifamily. Oh, there. So multifamily is right at the top, or accessory, yes. So those are all your definitions of dwellings. So single family, two family or duplex, multifamily. And multifamily is basically 3 or more families or households living independently of each other. So it can be 3 or it can be 3,000.
And as it stands now, 3 is fine with S100 definition.
So in your
Business district.
village business
Yeah.
district, well, that definition works.
Okay,
Because it can be 3 or more, right? So it could be 3 up to whatever you want it, almost an infinite number. What S100 says is you have to allow multifamily dwellings of 4 or less units in everywhere where there's water and sewer, and basically you already do that. Because in your village business district, you allow up to 5 units per acre, and multifamily they go through a site plan review. A conditional use review is not required in your village business district, so they're permitted. So basically, you've met the statute.
okay.
Here's my next question for you, and this definition, depending on how you answer my next question, whether or not we redefine multifamily dwellings might not be important. So my next question goes to density bonuses. Under S100, basically you must allow at least a 40% density bonus, and I would suggest you make it 50 or even 100, just so that the math is easy for Chris. Seriously, no, I don't want to, he doesn't want to be figuring out what a density bonus of 40% is on.
Oh, don't make me reply to that. Okay, go ahead. Keep
No,
going.
I'm serious.
I think if he's doing the job, he can do 40%.
Well, but it's hard to get to a round number. It's harder to get to a round number. So I would say do 50%, but you don't have to believe, they're your regulations, Slim. I'm just here, they're the town of Bristol's and they're this commission, so
Yeah,
you all
yeah.
get to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
But for affordable projects, you need to provide a density bonus. And that's in your village business district, because that's where is currently served by water and sewer.
What's the definition of affordable projects?
Good one.
So, affordable housing and mixed-use development density bonus in municipal water and sewer service areas that allow residential development bylaws must permit a dwelling unit density bonus of 40% and a bonus of 1 habitable floor above the height maximum. All right. It didn't really give it to me in the summary.
Does the state have a definition of affordable housing?
Yes, they do. It's generally
very clearly laid out.
The answer is yes. They've got a definition as to, it's not always that easy to apply, but they have a definition.
Okay.
Because affordable is tied to 30% of income, and then they tie it to 80% of the median income, and it changes by county, and it's there, it exists, you can figure it out, but it's not like that.
Got a rough figure for us in the Addison County?
As to what would be affordable?
Like, am I making 100,000, I'm making 50,000, I'm making whatever,
Your, well,
I could qualify.
the median rent for Addison County for a 2-bedroom unit is $1,192 per month.
Okay,
So
1,200.
someone can pay that. If you assume that you should spend no more than 30% of your income on your housing, I'm gonna just say 1,200,
That's 14.4 for the
so
year. And you're saying that's 30%?
30, no more than
So you
30%.
multiply by 3 plus, so you're getting around, well, that's only 40, that's like 45.50 or something like this.
Yep,
Okay.
for that. Now that's, yeah, that's one of the four.
Yeah, well, that person deserves an affordable house, I think, yeah, sure. All right. Sounds about right, yeah?
Okay.
So,
Where I was going with this is, you've got to give a density bonus in the village business district of at least 40%. We had talked earlier as to whether or not you all wanted to give what I'll call density bonuses to duplexes and/or multifamily units. So right now, a unit is a unit is a unit, right? So a duplex needs twice as much property as a single family home, because it contains 2 units and a single family home contains 1 unit.
with the
And-
change in the regulations, does that still apply?
Yes, I believe so.
So if you put in a duplex, it's not,
It's
okay,
this,
so it's
it's,
permitted, but you still have to require.
With density, it's dwelling unit, it's still 2 dwelling units within one structure.
Okay,
so right now you comply with the regulations. The question was, if you wanted to encourage more duplexes or multifamily homes, you might say it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, it's a 1.5-to-1 ratio, or 2-to-1, and you could put a duplex on the same lot, or have the same, you could have twice as many
Yeah.
units as a single family home.
And we would use affordability as potentially as the reason?
You could, or you could just say duplexes. You have a lot of discretion.
so I guess, yeah, so I guess when does, so the density bonus in S100, when it talks about affordability, is driving a certain amount of affordable housing into a development? As a requirement, or is it an incentive?
It's any, in order to be an affordable development, they're gonna have to have at least a mix of income ranges there. So they're gonna have at least 20% of the units are gonna have to be for, let's say 80% of median income.
Who monitors and/or controls the rent?
The rent?
In other words, maybe
It,
charge 30% of median income in the beginning, but what's
so a lot of the time, affordable rents are tied to what HUD, so Housing and Urban, Federal Housing and Urban Development would quantify as affordable, so they reset it every year. And they do it for 1, 2, and, no, they do it for efficiencies, 1, 2, 3 bedroom units. And they do it county by county. They do it county by county. They might even do it by city for somebody like Burlington.
That part makes sense, but um, what if the rents go up faster than
Well, if you've agreed to make it an affordable housing development, you're basically limiting the rent that you're going to take, and you're tying it to
okay? What would
the
be,
HUD figure or some other figure, depending on whose money you're taking and, what their regs are.
but after, that part I understand too, but after the units are built, let's say if there's a 40% bonus, and then the the demand for those units increases substantially so that there can be a higher market rent. All of a sudden the rent is not affordable anymore, but the units are already built.
So the units will be tied to, let's say, the HUD standard that I just talked about for a certain number of years. Maybe it's indefinitely, maybe it's 5 years, and it depends on the program where they got the money from, usually. And honestly, I'm not an expert in all the different affordable housing
Okay,
financial programs, so I'm floundering a little bit.
but you meet one of the program's criteria, which are probably reasonable if they're used nationwide. And now that you mention it, I have heard of some buildings in Burlington that after a certain number of years return to ownership of the builder or the original builder. All right,
Yeah.
it's
Yes,
complicated. I'm
they
not
would,
I'm not
I
too
would,
keen on it. But
okay,
go
I would
ahead.
tell you the applicant would need to satisfy your development review board that they'd have to show why it was an affordable unit. And we could put in criteria, I could tie it to one of the major indices, so
I hear you.
I'll look at that.
My view is that we've made some pretty good changes in the direction of higher density and that we don't require any further bonuses.
So that, in the village business, that 40% is only for affordable and mixed use?
Yep.
When
So
you
it could
say
be
mixed
elderly.
use, it's affordable mixed use?
The,
Or is it just if you put commercial and residential in there, it's 40% bonus?
municipal water and sewer service areas that allow residential development bylaws must permit a dwelling unit density bonus of 40% and a bonus of 1 habitable floor above the height. So I'm reading the summary. Affordable housing and mixed-use development density bonus. And I've gotta delve deeper into the statute and,
Okay.
and get,
I didn't
I'll
know
get
if it
that
was all
definition to you.
tied to affordable, or if somebody came in out and replaced one of the buildings out here, they could now go a story higher because they have a business on the bottom and apartments up above than what the regs currently say.
They may be able to.
With market
yes.
value apartments.
Yeah, they may be able to.
Okay.
I don't know if it's an and or an or.
Okay.
So I've got to look, but I wrote myself a note to look at the definition of affordable and mixed use.
Okay.
In S100.
Thank you, just for clarity.
Yeah.
That would be good, but did I hear you say that this is what's required under the new state law?
In areas that have water and sewer, so in the town of Bristol, only your village business district, which is really the core of your downtown, right right here, has water and sewer, so at the last meeting, we, revised the district boundaries just a little bit, so all the water and sewer is now in the village business district, so we've structured the village business district to comply with the act, and therefore, for portions of the act that are tied to water and sewer, only the village business district needs to comply with them. So we made life easy for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. As a practical matter, though, building on a couple previous comments, isn't that going to create some difficult and awkward situations for the buildings in our downtown, which are two-story by and large and older and not really capable of being increased by 40% without major structural change, unless you build higher, which makes me also want to ask about that phrase in which you read earlier about habitable space above the maximum height. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, the provision that I just read, one of the solutions, I think the legislature recognized that and basically said, you get a 40% and you can put in one additional floor higher. Municipal water and sewer service areas that allow residential development bylaws must permit a dwelling unit density bonus of 40% and a bonus of one habitable floor above the height maximum. So if you had to, you could build up to get your density bonus, is how I read that.
So right now, in the village business, the maximum height's 50 feet. So they could go to one floor above that.
Okay.
Correct.
And they're higher than everybody else, yes.
Yes.
If they needed to get their density bonus.
So do you
Not
know,
necessarily if they needed to, if they wanted
If they
to.
chose to, yes.
yes, that's a fact that, say all that line of buildings or on both sides are at 50 feet above?
No.
They're not that high, are they?
No,
Oh,
that's the
allowed.
maximum of what's allowed for new construction.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But for the business blocks, they're all non-complying, so you can't add to them, right?
There are a lot of other issues as far as fire and safety and wastewater capacity and things that aren't necessarily covered by your zoning regs, so.
Handicap access.
So I think when we talk about village business district, there's some very select few lots in there that this could apply to, and it's not like somebody's gonna revamp Main Street, because it's already not.
To some extent, they could though, right?
How can
With one
it
or two-
non-comply?
Well, if one or two buildings, you take them out and put in something else.
Would you be complying if you did that?
You could theoretically tear something down and build something that could comply. It doesn't necessarily, I'd have a hard time seeing you make financial sense of doing it, but it's possible.
Be something like the bank. If you were to tear at that end.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
or this one here too.
Yeah, take that down and put in business on the bottom floor and go up to 60 feet with apartments above,
What are
depending
the,
on the size of it. That could scale pretty well.
do you have the top of your head the new properties that were added to the Vermont business Bristol?
The village business district,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
It was where your existing water and sewer was,
Right.
so there were
So I could-
3 or 4 of them, mostly on this side of the block. I can show you easier than I can tell you.
Including like some of the houses going up the road, some of those have it? I don't think so, no. The bank, I guess.
So if you, this is your old one, there were,
The corn, a lot of them, I think they were.
this one, this little one right here, so it was kind of sticking out, it was in the, It was in the Rock District. Right on
Oh, this is so hard for me to read, but this must be Mountain Street
Mountain
going
Street,
up.
that's
So-
correct.
So on the other side of Mountain Street?
On the
Oh,
village
okay.
side of
Oh,
Mountain
okay.
Street.
So, yeah. That Fred Baser's place maybe, and the one next to it to the corner?
That's
Yes,
very
yes.
possible.
I think Fred's and, Moyers and
Jones.
Jones was in there, and
And when John
then
Moyers
there was
got into
that
it?
Brenham one just down the street here.
Yeah,
That was
And down South Street a little bit.
down
it's
South
Tom
Street.
Wallace's
Remember that, yeah.
daughters, and I don't know what her married name is.
Most of them
Well,
were
Elizabeth
actually went into
Kelly.
the HDR district, not into the village, or some of them went into the HDR district. But you can see we, looked at your water sewer area, and then we kind of added everything that was in there, and then looked, and where there were a couple like missing teeth, or one, it didn't make a lot of clear sense, we adjusted them just a little bit.
But they all that got in have the sewer and water. Yeah?
No,
No.
I would tell you, two of them that don't have water and sewer, but were commercial uses and kind of stuck out like sore thumbs, went
Sprout
in.
House.
What's
Sprout
that?
House was one of them, well, I call it Sprout House, because that's what it was 30 years ago.
This is appropriate, I think.
I
It is
guess
the
it's-
Sprout House.
See?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, Kevin, we've heard from Bill about what he would like. I'm not sure we heard from everybody else about what they would like for density bonuses and outside of the village business district, and how we apply them to multifamily and or duplexes.
What do you think, Slim?
Yeah, I'm thinking, go ahead. I'm thinking.
Shannon?
We don't have to apply them outside that district, correct?
That's correct.
I don't see it necessary, I guess. I'm not seeing much of a need for it, that extra 40%.
It'd be nice to have affordable housing, a little more affordable housing. That's what we're getting out of this, if we
Yeah.
can do that. It's getting pretty
Most
expensive.
of the time it's going up, yes, I know.
So if we did this bonus thing, would it would apply to other zones as well, or do we have to
You can
make
limit
it
it,
part of other zones?
you can limit it to, you have to do it in the village business district. You have to do at least 40% in the village business district
For those qualifying projects.
for those qualifying projects. You could choose to do density bonuses for if you wanted people to build more duplexes, or if you wanted people to build more multifamily dwellings. Then rather than have the units the same, right? A unit is a unit is a unit, so if you say you've got a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, you can put a single family house on it. You need 20 to get a duplex. You could make it 10 for a duplex. You could make it 10 for a multifamily if you chose to. And then the question would be, what size multifamily? So you've got a lot of leeway depending on what you want to incentivize.
What do you think, Rob?
I think that we increase the density quite a bit drastically in some areas. I think it may be too much in some of them. Kind of loses the whole planning area concept. But anyway, I think that adding density bonuses is just double dipping and going far beyond what we've already done for increasing those densities.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we could see how we've done and what it looks like, and have a little experience with the density that we've already accepted into these, or, I mean, I guess we could talk about any of these things again and change them, but we have, at least for now, have accepted these more dense, areas, and before we go further, it makes sense to maybe see how this is gonna work out.
I have a different opinion.
All
What
right,
is-
I'm so happy.
What is your opinion?
I think with the existing housing stock in HDR, it may, and I'm biased on this,
Mhm.
because I have, that, it'd be good to have a density bonus for duplexes
For,
and
for
duplexes.
something, yeah.
I'm not sure about multifamily, and I'm not sure if you could limit density bonuses to owner-occupied duplexes. But,
I'm not sure about that, I don't know if you
yeah,
could.
Yeah,
What
change.
I don't think we want to lose sight of the number of large houses that are in the village planning area, or what we know as village planning area today.
So in your case,
In
would you,
full disclosure, I have a
Yeah.
non-conforming duplex underneath current regulations.
well, so you already had your duplex, I thought maybe you wanted these, but so what's the difference between a duplex and an ADU for your situation?
Duplex is in one building.
ADUs could be in the same building.
Could be
Size, comparison size
size,
also.
okay, yeah, size, that's true, but ADUs can be separate buildings. and
Can also be
duplexes-
separate, that's right.
Duplexes cannot.
So,
Right.
where did we end up with HDR and density?
4 units per acre,
So we did not change that.
that's correct.
Okay. Were we circling back to that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's like a 10,000 square foot scale.
But anyway, there's obviously a stronger opinion not to, so.
No.
We'll keep it the way it is.
Okay. No, okay, it's 8:40. Basically, the rest of my agenda was your parking lot items, so it was your inn and guest facility and boarding house. You wanna just take that up next time? And we'll basically circle back to everything we've done, because I only have a couple little things. Would be your parking lot items. And then basically a review of all the different changes that we've made.
That's good. Is that a hard one, that the in one, or the, I guess it is.
It will be, yes.
It might be, so,
And then the other one
Okay.
that's on there is business yard too. There's, I don't know
Yeah.
what the weather is on that one, but it's been requested to be
Yeah,
reviewed. So next meeting, we will address the balance, and then what will you have, if we're gonna
Prior-
start looking?
prior to the meeting, I will get you out a fully revised copy of your development, regulations, excuse me. And, I'll get it out to you a week before the meeting, and all the revisions that you have made through this process, so since we started, will be in there.
a couple other questions you wrote down. too.
Will they be
And
redlined?
I'll have yeah, they'll be red lines, so you'll be all be able to see it.
Nice.
And I guess I'd say we'd start with the parking lot items that are unresolved and finish those, and then we'd basically just start at the beginning and go through your regs and look at all the, at least preliminary decisions that you've made, and it would be, open for conversation to all of you. And you could bring up anything that you didn't choose to change again too, if you had second thoughts about it.
So this is on the 19th is this meeting, right?
On the 19th is this meeting,
Next
correct?
one, yes.
Next one.
It's only my wife's birthday, but we'll make this work. Gotta do something really good the day before.
Like
There
going
you
for a
go.
long weekend. Maybe that's just me.
For the I section of definition.
Aye.
Yeah.
Oh, just while we're still here, so there are other inducements we could put in for density bonus. I mean, things like alternative energies or better installations or whatever, whatever. They just kept top of my head, but.
You could, yes,
Yep.
if you look at Heinsberg, they have a really, a lot of different density bonuses for a lot of different things.
Okay,
It's
working?
pretty complicated, I'm not sure how well it's working. But the answer is yes, it's possible.
Yeah, but those are important things, I mean, to have a well-constructed building as opposed to a lesser well-constructed building.
Mhm.
It's gonna be nice in the future.
We did briefly, I don't know if
It's
you.
hard to include all the energy bells and whistles and then still say it's gotta be affordable.
Yeah,
But yes.
well, it doesn't, well, maybe we don't need it to be affordable. Long-term affordable.
We did brush on the the Heinsberg regulations, I don't know if you missed that meeting or not.
Yeah, I think
but
I
it
was.
Not a lot of appetite to go back to that.
No, I agree, but I'm just wondering what might be something we might think would be really worth it for the long-term good result in Bristol. That's all, but, yeah.
Okay, so, we'll move on to the next item then.
Okay,
Which-
do you need me for anything
I
else,
don't
Kevin?
think so. Well, I wanted to talk about a communication plan, so we're getting towards the end of this thing, but I don't think we got enough players to do that, so I'd recommend tabling that until the next meeting, and then we've just got administrative matters, so,
What did you mean by communication plan? To the public?
yeah,
Outreach?
no,
Okay.
yeah. Public outreach.
We can create a good, summary memorandum of everything. Here was the charge, here were the actions we chose to take to implement that charge. So, and then have a couple of good public meetings, you know, where so I guess that's how I do it.
Yeah, okay,
All right,
okay,
I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
leave you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Bill, nice to see you.
Likewise.
We have minutes from the August 1st meeting up for approval.
I think that's the one I missed.
I was not there.
Motion to approve, I read through the minutes, I didn't see anything offhand,
Okay.
anything correction.
Second,
Second.
yeah, so everybody in favor? Not that we need to
Can I
vote on.
vote?
Okay, so we'll
Well, you don't go online and watch it again?
take that.
I do sometimes.
We don't have a zoning administrator to report. Miscellaneous correspondence, there was just a few things. Probably the only thing worth noteworthy is regional planning is doing a housing survey, it has been doing a housing survey, which Katie is coordinating that, Carrie Rakoff Meyer. And she popped that out to get a little bit more attention recently, so that's out there.
I did it.
Cool.
It's easy, I'll say, it's easy, doesn't take long.
No, it's,
Every question, no problem.
so if there's any other, I don't have anything else for that. And doesn't look like we have any, public here. So,
Where's Jim?
Jim's not here today.
You might see that.
So we don't need to do that, so next thing to do is entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Second.
Okay, we're gonna make note of that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you.